This is the Skin Science Podcast. I'm Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, and here we'll investigate everything skin science and dissect it from a scientific perspective, analyze it from a medical perspective, critique it from a consumer perspective, and give insight from an industry perspective.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am Dr. Thomas Hitchcock, and with me in the studio, I have Angela Wilson McDonald.
I'm on a roll.
Jenkins Heimerschmidt, or whatever.
Just 3 names, not 4.
Okay. How you doing, Angela?
I'm great.
All right. I know you're anxious to get out of here. You have some fun stuff to happen. It's
well,
Friday night, we're taping.
it's Texas and it's football season, so what can you say?
Football, bring a book. All right. Anyway, and we also have Dr. Jose Maldonado with us, leading the topic today. How are you doing, Jose?
Doing great. Just hanging out with you guys and having a good time.
Yes, indeed.
He knows how to get a raise. And then we have in the back in the peanut gallery, we have Ndashe Kamungu. All right, I've said it at least 5 times today, so I think I might have gotten it.
Yeah.
But she looked a little hesitant.
She looked very hesitant. I think you might have missed it that time.
All right, and then we have
nice
Seti and Alan, our producers, and then Dr. Brian Jones is in the other room. He's mad at us, I think. No, I'm just kidding. He's got stuff that he's working on. And so we were so enthralled with the topic that Jose had picked out last time about the fact that we believe that there's more and more evidence that there is an association with species of fungus that live on the skin and the occurrence of acne vulgaris, as well as truncal acne and fungal acne, which we were well aware of. And so tell us, Jose, what is the evidence that it's actually associated with vulgaris versus just truncal acne?
So one of the things that's associated is that we keep finding it. We find it in the lesions. So that's going to tell us something.
Of the face for acne vulgaris.
Face, yes, of the face. Multiple different, and once again, we want to be specific. It's specific strains of this species. We found it on the face. Once again, we keep finding that if C. acnes, C. acnes gets all the blame, but we actually find less of it and more of this fungal yeast when we're comparing numbers.
Okay. So you said that in the last episode, right? So why is that important when it comes to how we treat, or how we diagnose?
Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons we want to treat is because one of the things that keeps getting thrown at acne is one of the first line of defense is antibiotics when you go see a doctor.
That's right.
Antibiotics. And Angela, you were saying...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's firsthand.
You see it as first antibiotics.
Doxycycline.
And if it was truly a bacterial infection, then the antibiotics will wipe it out, and nobody would have acne. I mean, now we have resistant strains of antibiotics. That's one reason, but most people going back before they were there, nobody would have acne because the antibiotics would have knocked it out. Just how antibiotics knocks out any other bacterial infection, but it doesn't. And in some people, it doesn't do anything. It sticks around. That tells us it's just not a bacterial infection.
There's more to the story. Simply bacterial.
It's more to the story. And Angela, we were talking, and you asked me this question. You said, there's something like a benzoyl peroxide that my daughter used. Can that kill these? And can this kill the yeast that could be causing the acne? And you stumped me, and I was like, I don't know. I was like,
what you asked?
I did.
Okay. Yeah, she asked me that.
In a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. You weren't there.
Yeah. And
you have a life without me?
Indeed.
You exist when I'm not around?
Indeed.
Right.
And I was truly stumped, and I might have even said no, and I'm like, probably not, because it's marketed. We were told about benzoyl peroxide. It kills bacteria. That's what we're told.
Causes acne causing bacteria, but most of the time they're talking about C. acnes, right?
And I was like, I don't know. And you truly stumped me. And I'm like, let me go back into the literature and let's see what the literature says. And what I'm finding is that a benzoyl peroxide product could actually be more of an antifungal agent than an antimicrobial agent. Okay. And it seems to be better at minimizing and decreasing the numbers of these yeast causing acne, or could be causing acne, than the actual bacteria. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, this is brand new news to me. Like, I was actually really shocked by this.
Well, if it was Dr. Jones in the seat, he would not be shocked.
That's true. But I was truly shocked because, once again, when it comes to these products, I was just taking at face value what we see when we go down the aisle of a drugstore, and it says it kills bacteria, and I just assume it kills bacteria. That's all it does,
Right.
I know how it kills the bacteria. It's a free radical. It gets in there and starts messing up with the bacteria. It gets in there, starts messing with the bacteria DNA, damages the integrity of the bacteria just kind of dies away. But now I'm learning that it could actually be better at killing antifungals. Be better as an antifungal in lysing these yeast that cause acne.
Right. So now we're not making any claims necessarily that is knowing that that's the case. But we do know the literature does say it's an antifungal. So the fact is is not going to discriminate. If you put it on the face, it's going to kill fungus as well as bacteria. And based on what we're reading here in some of these studies, it's going to kill more fungus than it's going to kill bacteria. That being said, there's more bacteria on your face than there's fungus, so you can kind of like do the math to kind of see where we're going with this. So one thing that we do know, and again, we have Dr. Day on the line, and we're going to go to her in a few minutes, to look at basically how she typically treats based on whether it's fungus, whether it's bacteria, whether it matters, because frankly, I think that's the problem. The problem is that most people assume it's one thing. They assume it's C. acnes. They assume C. acnes. They don't even think about other bacteria, let alone other species, or I'm sorry, let alone other kingdoms, you know, and so that's as different as you can get, you know, and so I think that's where I do know that there is literature about fungal acne, but they don't consider acne vulgaris. They consider them two different things. But I think we need to be careful about falling into this pitfall, which happens throughout history. It's happened where we have a dogma that we say there's absolutely no way this can change or be wrong. And then, at some point somebody brings something to attention and then they get burned at the stake and then they say, oh, wait, they were right, and then they move on,
Burned at the stake.
Like Copernicus or whoever it was, who said the world did not,
Galileo?
Okay.
Yeah, the sun didn't revolve around, it was a Galileo. Okay, Galileo. Anyway, that being said, that's where for me, I look at all this information, and it's not that I have all the answers necessarily. It's that I have enough information that tells me something isn't right with our story that we're being told. And, I, for years, have been working towards, the microbiome and seeing how we can change the story here, knowing that it's being told wrong. But now the microbiome's part of that. And we're probably going to find that the virobiome also contributes because we know there's phage that are specific for certain bacteria and fungus that are also going to be part of that environment, that ecosystem. And just like the wolves, the elks, the bunnies, the beavers, the berries, the trees, the water, and the soil, it's all interconnected. And it has nothing to do with one's better than the other or one's, healthier than the other necessarily. It's the fact that if I get rid of the wolves, the elks eat everything, kills everything else off, erodes the soil. These are, and this, of course, if this sounds like out of left field, it's an analogy I'm using in the book.
Yes. Now everybody's going to have to go buy the book.
Yeah, you're going to have to buy the book.
To understand that analogy.
So, but basically, if the reason why I bring that up, even in the book, is because it's the true story of Yellowstone National Park in the United States, is that they thought, let's get rid of the wolves, and it destroyed the park, basically.
The ecosystem.
It destroyed it. It was no longer, it didn't have the beauty that it once had. And in 1995, they decided to reintroduce the wolf, the predator, because they said they understood. They ruined the ecosystem and they were trying to see if they could fix it. And lo and behold, it has begun to heal. And so that's why in the future, I do think that things like reintroducing native skin bacteria of certain, certain strains and such.
That would be brilliant.
Would be brilliant.
Wow.
I think that curating the microbiome is actually going to be a thing in the not too distant future, where we're going to see that it actually is a similar phenomena. And that's why I think that particular story of Yellowstone National Park is powerful, because I think that it gives us a really nice analogy to the ecosystem that we are. So, Jose, how do you feel about all that?
I feel like this is going to be an uphill battle, but we have Angela here who's going to educate people. Like, even myself, I feel like I'm very new. Like, this is all new to me. Like, I took everything at a face value of the story of acne. And now that I'm doing my homework and going into the literature, I'm like, oh, there's more to the story. It wasn't as cut and dry as I once thought it was. And we need people like Angela who's going to come in and,
ask the tough questions.
Ask the tough questions, but not only just educate the average consumer. Because if I go talk to my friends right now, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? No, I don't want bacteria on my face.
They're walking through the aisle just like you did and following the messaging that they're seeing in that aisle. And, I think it's important for us to realize just everything that you just said, everything that we do, there's some type of reaction that it causes.
Right. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's a fundamental of physics.
So, and that is the same with the treatment of acne. We kill off one thing, but it's going to cause the growth of another thing. We have to start questioning, is that overgrowth associated
and
with
not just that,
the persistence of acne?
It could be taking away substance that's very good for us, right? It's more complex story, and people laugh at me because I have little...
I do. I laugh a lot.
People laugh at me because I have little, phrases that I overemphasize, and they say basically like, eye roll, you're trying to like sell your story or whatever. But the fact is, there's a reason I say things over and over. Like when I say at the end of Beauty and Bacteria, you have billions of bacteria in your face, and I think that's awesome. I used that when I was pitching my company back in the day, when I was trying to get people to listen to me, because the fact is, I know that people think it's gross. I know that it makes people pay attention that like, do we really? And why do you think it's awesome? So that they actually, because that's an antithesis of what you normally would think.
Yeah.
You would normally say you have billions of bacteria in your face, scrub them off.
Let's get them.
Let's get them off. Let's use whatever soap we can get to get those
the
clean.
Pumice
Let's get 99.9% of the bacteria off. Oh, it was her joke. She was laughing, not mine. I thought it was my accent. Never mind. All right, it's a tough crowd. But, so for me, that's why I say things like that. When I say you should have biome care, not skin care, there's a reason. It's not splitting hairs. There is a reason, because we are not just skin. We have a whole ecosystem, and skincare is part of that. You want to care for your skin, but you care for your skin by caring for the ecosystem.
Of your ecosystem.
And so there's a reason I say it's not a marketing thing per se, although it is a great marketing thing, but it's not because I'm doing it for marketing. It's doing it because I want to not be reductive, because I think that I know better now because I've done the research. And so I'm trying to get everybody else to know better too.
Right. And
so that's what, for me, when I see this information, it's not about casting doubt or making it more complicated for the consumer. It's about saying, if benzoyl peroxide works, and we know it does, why does it work? Are we using it the correct way? Because if we're thinking it works the way that it doesn't work, it could be that we're using it in a deleterious way that we'll find out someday that we should have used it at a much lower percentage or used it at a much shorter contact time. We maybe shouldn't have had leave-on benzoyl peroxides, or so we don't know until we start to explore why it works. And if we find out that it's not because of bacteria, but it's because of fungals, the real question is, are we doing it right based on that information? And that's where I think we take medicine forward. We're not saying that we're doing it wrong. We just need to take it forward a little bit more. So I think this is a great segue to bring in Doris and hear a little bit about what she has to say about all the jibber jabber that we've had, because I speak as a fool. I don't know about you. Yeah, you guys definitely.
Yes, you do.
No, just kidding. All right, so let's get Doris dialed up and see what she has to say. All right, Doris, welcome back. We're continuing our discussion. Thank you for holding on for us.
Always happy to be here. And you call, I'll show up.
Oh, wonderful. Good to know. So, like I said, I have some really interesting thoughts on, the fact that we're seeing more and more evidence of yeast and fungus contributing to acne vulgaris, not just what we call fungal acne, and what that means as far as treatment. Now, I want to start by giving you an example of something that I came across a couple years ago, and it's really kind of stuck with me. And it's one of the things, as I've been over the years contemplating what truly causes acne, because there's a lot of stubborn people in dermatology that basically say it is C. acnes. They say it is C. acnes. It causes it. We got to kill C. acnes. That's the only thing. I'm going to give antibiotics. I'm going to use benzoyl peroxide to kill C. acnes. And, even when I talk to them about, the mechanism of things like benzoyl peroxide, I don't believe it's necessarily the antibacterial activity that's necessarily helping to get rid of acne, because we know it works. So I was, in my quest to find more information about our holobiont, our whole ecosystem, I came across this publication. It's actually a correspondence in a journal in May of 1989. And this physician is writing in saying that he has discovered that in 3 of his patients, 2 of which were gentlemen on hormone replacement with testosterone, normal levels of testosterone, around 200 mg per week, injections, they noticed they got truncal acne, which is not atypical on their back. People that take hormones can get that, especially men. But what they noticed was when they took a nystatin for some other reason, and about 500 milligrams, one of them was 500 milligrams 6 times a day through ingestion through water. And then another one was about 250 twice a day, I believe. And they found that when they took the nystatin, the acne would clear completely. And then when they would stop taking the stop taking the nystatin, it would come back. And then they found a woman who had acne as well, and it wasn't because of the same reason, because she wasn't taking the hormones, but she was having acne on her face, and she also had acne on her face, and she also had vaginitis, which we all know that's the vaginal canal is a very hospitable environment for yeast. It's why a lot of times yeast infections are prevalent in some women. And they found that for her, when she took the nystatin, 500 milligrams 6 times a day, that again, both conditions would go away completely. And when it would come back, when they would stop taking the nystatin. And that last one was the most interesting for me, because the truncal one I could understand, because a lot of people equate truncal to fungus, but not a lot of people will say that facial acne is contributed to by yeast. And so I wanted to get your take on that. And of course, those are case studies, but there are other things about benzoyl peroxide I'll get into in a second. But I want to get your take on that and what you know about that and how that makes you respond.
Well, I think it makes sense that there's a component of it, but these medicines also can do, it's hard to know if like the whole biome is off and there's an overgrowth of a strain. You can't tell that much from just a few people if there was something of the time of year or something else going on in their body, and something else with the testosterone and their temperature regulation, if they were sweating more. Someone who's vaginosis, if there was something else going on with her as well, where in those cases it might have been yeast that was overgrowing that could look like acne, but wasn't. It was an acneiform eruption, but it wasn't actually acne. And maybe some acne is acneiform, but we can't really tell the difference. And so we call it acne. So the question to me, the bigger question is acne always really acne? Or is acne sometimes acneiform, meaning that it looks like acne? I see people who come in with reactions to shampoos and they look like they have acne. It's white pustules on the skin, there's redness, there's some inflammation. But when we change their shampoo, their acne gets better. So it was actually an irritant contact that looked like acne. Right. And we could make it better in different ways. So I think there's a lot that goes on that we're calling acne as a sort of a wastebasket diagnosis, but it isn't always acne.
It's kind of a similar situation with atopic dermatitis, where there's a lot of different things that they're calling atopic dermatitis, and then they're saying there's the pseudo atopic dermatitis, and then so I think one of the problem is because they're kind of putting them into buckets based on what they think causes them, right? So they're saying, like, for instance, I've had folliculitis and it looks exactly like a bad pimple, but they're like, no, it's not acne, it's folliculitis. But I'm like, well, what's causing it? And they're saying it's an overgrowth of a bacteria. I'm like, well, isn't that what you're saying that acne is supposed to be too? And so it's like, it's kind of this, you're splitting hairs, no pun intended. I don't know if but you're splitting hairs about, what a disease state is based on, what is the definition of acne vulgaris? And you can't say it's C. acnes anymore because we know that's not the case. And the fact is we're having a lot of this evidence that's saying it's fungal, possibly fungal related as well. And so I think in the field of dermatology, as a skin scientist, I'm having to reboot the way that I think about these disease states, because we're learning that if you look at it holistically as the ecosystem, you cannot simply use old science and move forward. You have to start thinking about it as, I'm now knowing more information that's telling me that it's not consistent with what we thought was driving this disease state. And so I look at something like that, and you're right, it's anecdotal because it's 3 individuals. But given all the genetic metagenomic information is coming out, it's starting to change the way in which I particularly think about how we should look at somebody's disease state and how we should choose how to treat them. Because we know that a lot of acne, that we're throwing antibiotics at it and it's not necessarily helping. And so the fact is,
we're doing even worse.
Right.
There's new devices that are coming out that are trying to destroy or markedly diminish sebaceous glands. Those sebaceous glands do good things for us. And I don't know that I really want to eliminate them or markedly reduce them. I want to maybe change the way they're stimulated and change the environment that they're in. But we're going back to the old days where we used to use x-rays just to destroy organs of the skin.
I was going to ask you about that.
No, and it's horrifying to me,
Yeah.
but these products are hitting the market, and there's two of them coming now.
Yep.
And I'm going to follow the data and see what happens long term, but I don't know how that skin is going to age.
Right. I agree with you 100%. I think that it's one of those things in medicine, again, where we're going to take a step backwards, because I think those devices may be great for like sebaceous hyperplasia or something, when you have an overgrowth and you need to zap it or something, but holistically to get rid of all of
As
your.
a niche product.
Yeah, exactly. That's the case where, like, when you look at medicinal leeches or something, they once were used for everything, and then now they're used very niche for microsurgeries and such. So I would say 100%. Let's move to benzoyl peroxide real quick for sake of time, because I don't want to run out of time, because Dr. Maldonado has some more to say on this topic as well. But with benzoyl peroxide, I have been fighting to get people to think of it differently, because the thing is, it's a tool that is, if you think of what it is, it's a free radical. And it's going to kill things, and we don't need to be leaving it on our skin. It's just one of those things that'll wash off. It's more than fine. You want whatever is on the surface that is going to be labile for that to be killed, and that would be something like a yeast. And we can, in the literature, Dr. Maldonado here brought to my attention, because I've been thinking about benzoyl peroxide for the longest time, and what it truly does, it gets rid of acne, because we know it works, right? And so and what he found was that the science is now showing that when you compare antibacterial and antifungal activity of benzoyl peroxide, it's almost better as an antifungal. And so with all this evidence, I'm starting to think we should maybe take a look and maybe question, is it really acne causing bacteria, or is it anti causing fungus, or is it the interaction between the bacteria and the fungus, or what is it? We need to really start to think about all that we thought we knew, because at this point, we could be doing like what you said. We could be actually doing ourselves a disservice by not using the wrong treatments, but by using the treatments wrong. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's exactly right, and so perfectly said. It's not the wrong treatments, but it's we're using the treatments wrong, and maybe sometimes for the wrong people.
Right.
So with one, looking at the person in front of you, what is happening in their skin? What does their acne look like? What's the distribution? How old are they? When did it start? What triggered it? Looking at what in the environment you can affect directly. What changes were there? Are they having a very high processed food, high sugar diet? That might lead you more towards the fungal side of acne rather than the bacterial side of acne. And we need to take those things into consideration, look for patterns and trends, and then understand that benzoyl peroxide has a lot of different activity. It's not specific for bacteria. It also has some for C. acnes, it's broader spectrum, and also it has some anti-inflammatory activity, and it could be affecting the environment in general, where both bacteria and fungal elements grow,
right,
and may not make it so promising for them to survive.
Right.
So it can do so many different things. And then it's the concentration of benzoyl peroxide.
Right.
We're learning we don't need that high a concentration. And if you go too high, you're going to irritate the skin, which could make things worse.
Right.
So there's a lot to take into account, which is why you see a physician who thinks about those things. And as the end person using it, you just have to know that there's a reason why we come up with the formulas that we do when we add in a retinoid or a salicylic acid and a benzoyl peroxide at different times of day, the combinations in which we use them, and how we hydrate and protect the skin along with it. Even how you exfoliate or pat your skin dry rather than rub it. All of those things have an impact on your skin biome and how your skin responds to the treatments that you use.
100%. And also remember, benzoyl peroxide is also slightly keratolytic, and so it can actually also help to exfoliate gently. So Doris, again, lots of pearls of wisdom there. Again, I think one of the things that you and I would agree on is that we don't know everything, but it's not about knowing everything. It's about doing the best with what you know. And so, as always, we appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you at the ASDS when we unveil.
Yes, I'll be there.
When we unveil our big thing.
So exciting.
All right. Thank you, Doris. Talk soon. All right. That was great information, as always. We love Doris. And I think, part of... I've been working with Doris coming on a decade, probably more than a decade now, at least a decade. She was one of the first people to, even before I approached you with Zycrobe, she was working with me, and she basically was ones that said, I don't get it, but I get you, and I'm going to listen to you.
I love that.
And see what the story is. And because I think that's where a lot of people, you're talking about like the consumers walking down the aisle and saying, I had no reason not to believe, you know, and that's the fact is, there are certain people in this world, like myself, who shoot myself in the foot sometimes because I am a skeptic about pretty much everything. And so it's one of those things, I'm a skeptic because when I was a young child, one of the things that you could say to me that caused me to go on a tantrum was, because I told you so. I hated that answer my whole life because the thing is, I just wanted to know why. I want to know why I got to go to bed. I want to know why I can't watch TV. I want to know why I don't stick my finger in the light socket, you know? And of course, sometimes I did things where I found out for myself.
Learned out the hard way.
Yeah, and for me, sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes you need to just trust, right? That the person that's telling you knows. But other times, and that's why I got my Ph.D., because when you get a Ph.D., you're supposed to be the expert in any niche of whatever you're studying. And I felt that the only way that I'm going to get to the why is if I become the expert. If I'm the one that actually has enough knowledge to actually interpret things with all the information that we have in today's world. And now, of course, I'm not claiming I'm an expert on everything. There's no way I could ever be that, and nobody could. But the fact is, why you get 12 years of education is not because you just want a fancy few letters behind your name. You do it because you want to satiate your curiosities. You want to know how the world works, what makes things tick. And for me, that's where I work well with Doris, and that's for me why I don't blame the consumers, because consumers are trusting that the people that are selling them things are not lying to them. Unfortunately, that's more often than not true. It's that and it's not that it's a lie.
It may not be intentional. Well, and it may not be intentional. It may be based on what we know today.
And also the
messaging is matching that information. What we don't understand is that medicine is always progressing.
That's correct. And you're just talking about medicine. I'm talking about like consumer goods in general.
Right.
Where, for instance, most of the people that make consumer goods are not scientists. They didn't do research. They just know that this is
they're meeting a need or a desire of the consumer.
Right. So, like for instance, people that make breakfast cereals, do you think they're actually always doing these studies to show what a well-balanced diet should? No. They know that in such and such a year, the USDA said that this is the food pyramid, and they said this is what we can say, and we're going to take advantage of that line and spin it however we can to sell you my Fruitios. And so that. I don't blame them for that. They're doing what they should be doing, and they're doing it with the guidance of whoever's in charge. It's supposed to be the experts. But the fact is, experts, myself included, for whatever expertise I have, are not always right. I'm not always right. No, I'm not never right, but I'm not always right on everything, nor is any expert, nor is every physician, nor is any everything, whatever you want to put in that blank. And so that's why you need skeptics in the world. You need people to always need to ask the question why, because not everybody is going to. Not everybody has the energy to, or some people are just way too busy with their doing other things in order to always ask why. So we need somebody to ask why for us, and that's where people that are more academically curious, like Doris, like myself, like Jose, like you as well, because you also ask the questions. Like you did to Dr. Maldonado.
Right. I know just enough to be dangerous.
Right. Well,
or to ask the tough questions.
Well, the thing is also knowing who to ask, right?
Right.
Because
I'm curious too, from a different perspective. But I'm curious too. I want to know better. I want to do better.
Right.
So I'm always asking the questions.
And I think that's also
as most consumers should.
As they should, but they don't always.
But they don't always. Yeah.
And one of the things that my father just had a pacemaker put in because he was having some episodes where he was having some arrhythmias and such. And one of the things that I told my stepmom when she was a little concerned that they were going to put it in without and she didn't know whether his physician or his cardiologist had been, and so I basically said, look, you and my father, you and Dad are your best health advocates. Nobody's going to want to take care of you more than you. So you as a consumer need to do your own homework. You cannot trust that everybody that makes every product has your best intentions in mind. And that includes medicine.
Right.
You have to realize that medicine is a business, as well as, there are physicians that want to do good, but the companies that make stuff, they want to do good too, don't get me wrong, but it is also a business, and a lot of times they're not going to ask why for you. You have to ask why for yourself. It's not the company's responsibility. It's not the physician's responsibility. Well, in some sense it is, but it's your responsibility to ask why, because you're the one that is affected the most. Mm-hmm. And so it is up to you. And it is, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But for me, it gets me in trouble a lot, like, for asking why when I shouldn't.
I know, I get really upset.
But it also helps me a lot, because it helps me to take me in directions where I maybe buy something that, duped me as well. And then I realize, oh, I forgot to show that, didn't I? No, this actually, okay, we'll end it with this, because we're at the end of our hour, but I had forgotten to do this. This is the puzzle of the episode here. This is actually, and it's taken apart because dear old Angela solved it, and I couldn't figure out how to put it back together. And so I have
solved one.
So anyway,
I've got one under my belt.
This is the apple, I believe, by Will Streeblos, and he actually is a well-known puzzle maker. This is actually a very simple puzzle. It's just basically a take apart, but
no, it was very, very, very difficult.
Very difficult. I can't figure out how to put it back together.
Diminish my accomplishment.
Anyway, thank you, audience, for your eyes and ears. If you want to find us or ask us any other questions, please visit our Instagram or our social media at Crown Laboratories, or you can go to our website at crownlaboratories.com, where you can find all these videos that we talk about all these subjects. Or if you want to look at me specifically and try to get in touch with me, you can find me at dr.t.hitchcock on Instagram, or you can go to dochitchcock.com. Again, keep asking why. And we thank you for your eyes and ears. We hope that you learned something and can glean something from this discussion. And we will see you again next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye everyone.
For now. Bye.